Hi, I'm Pete, alcoholic. Nice to be here. Thanks, Patty. Thanks for asking me, wherever you are. Hi. Oh, jeez. Oh, good, everybody didn't leave. Last time a lot of people left. Tommy the gardener came over today, my buddy Tommy, and who always sits in the back there, and he asked me, "Where are you going tonight?" I said, "I'm going to the Marina Center." He said, "You're not the speaker, are you?" And I go, "Yeah." He thought for a while. "You're not going to tell that story about those kids, are you?" And I said, No, I won't, Tommy, I promise." But he didn't come anyway. Hi, Brandy. Well, anyway, I was just thinking about what I was going to say, and I just thought, since I have spoken here something like 600 times since I've been sober, that I would just excise the stories that I always tell, which left me with pretty much how the Steelers beat the Raiders today and stuff like that. I don't know why they keep asking me. It's like I'm part of the repertory here. Do you know, like La Boheme is at the LA Opera, and just like people keep going there and people keep coming here, and they go there like maybe in hopes that Mimi will not get tuberculosis but run away with Rodolfo in the end, and maybe that's, that somehow, that I will tell, some different story when I'm up here, with a different outcome, I had a head shaving accident on the way in the shower on the way over here. And Jim Barracks, who took a birthday cake and who loves me but not enough to stay around for my talk, said to me, that's okay because he's the one that brought me here, so you can blame him. "Hey, Pete, how are you? You're bleeding profusely." I had on like a red and white shirt, so that happened. I had a dog named Thumper. I got him here. So anyway, I'm here because I'm a drunk, and when I grew up back east, and well, I allege that I grew up. I'm still growing up, but oh gee, I spoke at. Anybody ever speak at a Cocaine Anonymous meeting? I did the other night. It was the longest hour of my life, I'll tell you that. I was like, is this thing on? And they're very demonstrative, like they do things like, and stuff like that, and makes it really hard to give a good talk. And they applauded and there were like 100 people, and one person thanked me. He said, "Hey, I guess you were all right. Thanks." So, I don't know. I just didn't play at a cocaine. My sponsor, Howard, had me speak at a convention in Arizona once, and I didn't play there very well either. And toward the end, since they didn't like me, I said, "Oh, I remember. You're the people that thought Martin Luther King was a fight promoter." And because it was at the time that they were the only state that didn't have a Martin Luther King holiday. And then Howard thanked me for not telling everybody that he was my sponsor. He said, "Thank you for that. Was really nice of you to not." I get even. So, when I was a kid, I was a neurotic kid. I felt different from the other kids. I felt separate from the other kids. I felt like all the other kids were better friends with each other than they were with me. And I was always just scared. I was always thought something bad was getting ready to happen. And we would go on vacations, and they would have to bring me home after like 3 days on the vacation because I would have a pain in my side that wouldn't go away. And they even took my appendix out in hopes that then we could just go on vacations. And I would stay at my friend's house down the street, like you stay over at your friend's house, but the parents would bring me home at 4 in the morning throwing up because just staying 3 doors down the street created too much anxiety in me when I was like 12 years old, And my grandfather was the town doctor, and I used to go and stay with him. And he was a widower, and he lived by himself, so when he had to go deliver a baby or go to the emergency room, I was too scared to stay in his house by myself, so I always had to go with him. Therefore, I know just enough about medicine now to be a hypochondriac. And it was just awful, and I just, like, it's a true story. The school nurse came in and whispered something to the teacher, and I was sure that she probably just told the teacher. They found out that I was terminally ill, and I told the kid in front of me, I'm going to die, aren't I, you know, and he was like, what's wrong with you, you know? And so I went to high school, and it just wasn't any better. I was like a social moron. I had, like, horn-rimmed glasses and braces, and I had, like, a pocket protector before it was fashionable to have a pocket protector, you know, before they made any of the nerds movies. And I was like, I ran around with like the really cool guys, but I wasn't one of the cool guys. I was like a sidekick, like Patsy Weber, but I ran around with the cool guys. And then, so when it came time to go away, so it was like 3 more miserable years, and it was time to go away to college, you know, and I told the guidance counselor, I'd like to go to college in Ohio, and she said, why would you like to go to school in Ohio? I said, because you can drink at age 18 in Ohio, and that seemed, all things being the same, that seemed like as good a criteria as any. And so I went to this Methodist laundromat for unwashed minds in Cleveland, and I was like terrified. And in my first year, I got good grades, and I pledged a fraternity, and I played sports and all this stuff, but I was still like the same, you know, neurotic. And in the spring quarter of my freshman year, I was riding around in this guy's car. His name was Steve Strong, and he drove a little blue car, and he drank Duke beer. I'll never forget it. It was from Pittsburgh. And we went into the college bar, which was Reed's Bar, and that was, there I was to meet a very important figure in my life, Eve, the barmaid. And Eve was, she had platinum blonde hair and really big boobs, and she was, you know, she was like 70 years old. She had been a stripper in New York or something like 20 years before, you know, and it was just like love at first sight, you know. And she said to me, what do you have, honey? And I said, well, and I knew I was going to get served. And I knew I wasn't going to get served the 3.2% beer you're allowed when you're 18, but served. And I said, I'll have a shot. Yeah, that's it, a shot. And she said, a shot of what? I said, a shot of gin. That's it, a shot of gin. So I had like 10 or 12 of them or something like that. And it wasn't Tanqueray or Boodles. It was Old Cuyahoga or whatever, you know, you get in Cleveland. And so we're like riding around in this guy's car, and I'm throwing up out the window. And I'm telling him, can you look at the stars, smell the flowers? Isn't this the greatest night? Isn't, you know, you're the best friend I ever had. I knew this guy like for a week, you know, and I was euphoric, you know. And it was the other time that I was euphoric was when they took my appendix out and they prepped me with Demerol. And I, you know, I was like 14, and I was asking the nurse out, giving her my number, and I was, you know, well, I was like a different guy, you know. I should have known right then. And I like, you have beautiful hair, and you know, and I told the doctor, thank you so much. Cut anything you like, you know. Thank you, bottom of my heart, you know. And I didn't feel. That's how I felt this night, like I felt then. I didn't feel like something bad was getting ready to happen. I felt like something good was getting ready to happen. I didn't feel separate from everybody. I felt at one with everybody, and I didn't feel less than or different than. You know, and so I was back on that bar stool the next night, and I always say that I managed to squeeze 4 years of college in 8 years. And my parents, ask my parents, they paid the tuition. The book of Alcoholics Anonymous says that people drink essentially because we like the effect produced by alcohol. And I love the effect produced by alcohol, always did, you know, and it was almost like I was an uncomfortable person until I took my first drink, and then I was as normal as anyone else, you know. I mean, and it's just, you know, my natural state was always just a state of disconnection from everyone and everything, you know. And the little town I came from, it had like 4 or 5 factories or mills, and each of those factories and mills had a plant gate for each direction of the compass, 4 plant gates. And each plant gate had a bar on the corner across from it. So this little town of like 8,000 people had like 40 taverns, you know. It was like, should have been like the Guinness Book of World Records. And that's where life happened. And my grandfather, on my mom's side, who I was named after, appropriately, who always had a glow on, he would take my cousins and me up to the bucket of blood, and we'd sit on the stoop outside, and he would go in and have a shooter, and we'd wait for him, and Grandma would come by and bust him, and we would say, oh, Grandpa's just been in there 5 minutes, you know, he's using the phone, you know. And I always say that I've been covering up for alcoholics ever since, mostly myself, you know. And everybody drank. My mom and dad drank, and my brother drank, my aunts, like our neighbors, the Lurches, they didn't drink. So we weren't allowed to play with their kids, you know, because they're freaks, you know. I mean, everybody drank. And to this day, I still don't really trust anybody that doesn't drink unless they're recovering, you know, sort of. I never really saw stopping drinking as a virtue, you know. Like, I didn't, it's like people say, oh, 18 years. It's like congratulating a guy with hemorrhoids for not riding horses anymore. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, aren't you, I mean, like, what else was I going to do? You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I think I'll go to AA today. It'd make me a better person. I mean, I would have been dead the next day if I kept drinking. And I really wasn't, no one else really wanted me, to tell you the truth, you know. So, but anyway, that's sort of how my orientation toward alcohol. And, you know, so, I mean, it's like no wonder I became an alcoholic. I mean, it's just it's just a fact about me. You know, people say, oh, we're sick people getting well, or we're bad people getting good. I was just, you know, it's like I have a bald head and blue eyes, and it's just part of me, you know, and I have that allergy of the body and obsession of the mind that Dr. Silkworth talks about, and that, you know, normal people don't get the phenomenon of craving like we get, you know, and I'm just a person who gets the phenomenon of craving, you know, and I just liked how alcohol made me feel, and I didn't like the way that I felt when I didn't have alcohol, you know. And I think, you know, I'm giving my body to UCLA. Not that there's like a big, you know, rush on it or anything, and certainly hasn't been yet. And I just know when they put my brain in that formaldehyde, that lab technician's going to freak out when he hears the. So I was back on the bar stool the next day, and I was a pain in the ass right from the start, you know, and I just, you know, I was dishonest. I would tell the professor that the dog ate my term paper, my grandmother died, whatever, because I was always, you know, you can't be drunk all the time and not tell, you have to just tell lots of lies to keep going. And I felt sorry for myself, pour me another old whatever Eve, you know, and I had lots of resentments, you know. I resented the guy that was going out with my ex-girlfriend and every guy that went out with her before me. You know, I just had resentment, you know, just like a newcomer, you know, just resentments on top of resentments, you know. And that's just how I was. And the disease progressed, and I was like, one day I was like watching the TV, and it was like in my second senior year or something like that. I think I saw like a George McGovern ad on TV, and he was talking about, you know, stopping the Vietnam War and kicking Richard Nixon out of office. Sounded pretty good to me, you know. And so I signed up to work for George McGovern, and they sent me to Oregon, and I had never been west of Ohio before. And so I came out and I did that, and I wish I could leave. So I told you. I heard this son of a bitch 100 times. I'm getting out of here. So, wow. So I became like this migrant political community organizer, and I just traveled around the country, and I worked for different candidates and causes, and it was really fun, and it was mostly like a drinking tour of America. And the thing about me is, when I like what I'm doing, I control and enjoy my drinking. If I'm a happy, whole person, I'll drink 3 beers or 5 beers and stop every night, and I'll get drunk once a month or something. And that's just been the pattern of my drinking and using. And then when something goes wrong, that's when I just go at it, you know, and who knows for how long, you know. And so anyway, I also was like a champion freeloader, you know, like I would be running, like some guy would be running for governor of Florida, and they would bring me in to be in charge of Miami or something. So some rich guy, as a contribution to the campaign, would let the out-of-state organizer, like me, live at his house. So I would move into his house, and I would date his daughter, and eat his food, and drink his booze, and walk his dog. And then when the campaign was over, I didn't want to leave anyway. You know, I'd stay anyway, you know. And sometimes I just come back and visit. And I had little places like that all over the country, and they like me staying there. I just think it's the strangest thing, you know. And I think it's my karma now that these newcomers come to my house and just stay forever, you know, forever. Like a guy got really mad at me. I said, yeah, I have a newcomer on my sofa. And he said, I have 4 years now. I'm like, well, hell, it's time to get off my sofa. Give up that channel changer. So, I'm telling you, I remember once, I'm getting ahead of myself, but my friend Art always helped people, so I wanted to do the same thing. So I rented this house down in Hawthorne when I was pretty new, and I took all these newcomers in, and they burglarized the neighbors and caught the house on fire and overdosed and committed suicide. And I would put them in Robert Kennedy Hospital. We have all these psychiatric emergencies, and then they would make me belts, you know, and you know, but I stayed sober, you know, and so getting back to this, so anyway, I really had like wonderful experiences, and I usually share a couple of them. One of them was, I would be on there's a train called the City of New Orleans, but everybody that knows anything about it calls it the chicken bone. The reason we call it the chicken bone is because people eat chicken and throw the bones under the seat. And I met a porter on the train, and his name was Chicken Bones Jones, and he was like 70, and he lied about his age. He'd been working for the railroads since like 12, you know, and he liked me, you know. So after everybody went to bed, or whatever you do on the train, he invited me to come up to the front where all the crew sleeps, and we got into a poker game, and me and all the porters and passing a bottle of whiskey around and talking about Franklin Roosevelt, and I thought, wow, I had really arrived. Like, to me, that was as high as you could go in life, you know. And then I would be in Virginia, and I would be living in the coal fields, and, you know, living on some coal miner's sofa or something like that, and you know, just having a great time. And, you know, the guy would have like there would be like a river that would run through the town, and the water would be sort of a red color, and then the water out of the spigot would be a red color, and then there would be a 400-car coal train that would be snaking along the river, and then the hillside, there'd just be hillside to go straight up, and everybody lived up on top of the hill, and they all had chain link fences in their backyard and tombstones where their grandparents and great-grandparents were buried, and they had A.P. Carter lyrics on the tombstones, and I'd learn how to play the dulcimer or what the patterns on the quilts meant or something like that, and I just had like a really great time, and I had so many experiences like that. It was just wonderful. But anyway, my disease progressed and all kinds of bad stuff happened, and the story that I always tell is when I had this spectacular bicycle accident at Virginia Beach, and I smashed my head, and I had slurred speech and short-term memory loss, you know, but nobody noticed it, because when you're drunk all the time, you slur your speech and you can't remember things anyway. And so I had this friend Henry, and we were running him for governor of Virginia, and he liked Jimmy Carter. And he said, you know, Jimmy Carter's having this big, wants to have this big rally out in the coal fields where Virginia and West Virginia, Kentucky and Tennessee meet, and they trust you out there, and you go out there and you organize that for Jimmy, you know. And I went out there in the diminished state that I was in, and I'm always like mourning the loss of what the hell was her name, you know. And it's just like, I can't believe, you know, and she's probably with so-and-so now, you know, and I mean, it was us. So I'm in this condition, and I screwed it up really bad, you know. I had got the band there on the wrong day. I had sent a Volkswagen Bug to the airport for 12 members of the press. And the famous story is, you know, that we were out of booze, and the plane was late, like 5 minutes late, and I told the limousine driver, James, go get a six-pack, you know. So, of course, the plane landed, and there was no car, and I stalled him, you know, how's Rosalind, and he's like, Peter, where's a car? Oh, Governor, funny you should ask. We had to rent a car. When they declined my credit card, so Carter had to use his credit card. We were an hour late for the rally. My friend was furious. His face was so red, he was just furious. This was Jim Gibbs' fault. I blamed some other guy, you know, and I wasn't the least bit embarrassed, which is just like, you know, well, if I knew he would someday become president, I would have been embarrassed. No one else who I ever worked for ever got elected, so no, I say, hey, it was Billy's brother, he should have understood, you know. So it got worse. The last politics story, I was in New Hampshire, and there was this really nice man named Fred Harris was running for president, and it was in he asked me to be in charge of his New Hampshire primary, and I went up there, and I was just a mess, you know, and one night there was this guy, Michael, there was like this much, 2.5 feet of snow on the ground, was 0 outside. We had like 2,000 volunteers or 3,000 volunteers from all over the country to live. We were sleeping all over the place, and, you know, we were like, you know, I was like Washington at Valley Forge or something, had a really bad cold and was sick, And so this guy, Michael Federico, he was from Rhode Island. We just sat up and we were listening to the Bob Dylan Desire album, which I don't recommend when you're drinking heavily. And the next morning, I was sitting at my desk and like we were drinking red wine. The right side of my face got numb and the left side of my body got numb, and I was all confused and I was to not work I was so tweaked. They took me to the emergency room and I was not to work for like years. I was really sick. And whether it was because I smashed my head on the bike path, or whether it's because I had alcohol poisoning, or whether it's because the cook admitted putting poison in my omelet because I just replaced some other guy that was really popular as manager of the campaign. And we don't even really, but I mean, the truth of the matter was it happened to me because no wonder they tried to kill me. I was like a horrible drunk, and so I had this girlfriend / nurse named Mary, and she brought me to, she was going to school at UCSB, so I came out here with her. And I taught a little bit of political science, but mostly I just laid around and I was just messed up. And I would go to the market or something and I would be so scared. I would leave the apartment and I would get one block and have to run home. I was just scared to leave the apartment. And if I had even a tiniest bit of alcohol, I got deathly ill. And I had just come to the place where I just had experienced reverse tolerance or something, and I couldn't drink anymore. But what I did was I worked really hard to get my tolerance up so I could drink 3 beers without getting sick. And no one would do that but an alcoholic, just because we don't really know how to live without alcohol. That's our dilemma when we get here. We can't keep drinking and using because we're in trouble with the law, and we're in trouble with our job, or with our family, or with our health. But we can't not drink because we don't know how to live without alcohol. So that's like the rock and the hard place that we're between when we get here, and that's where I was. And so anyway, now that I can drink again, I'm way too important for Santa Barbara, so I moved to San Francisco and I got 2 jobs. I got a job as a firefighter for the city, and I got a job running an animal welfare agency. And well, if you're an Al-Anon or an alcoholic, we love to rescue, so I would just, it was great. I would rescue dogs and cats all day and people all night and go to the bar and drink and talk about it. And again, I controlled and enjoyed my drinking because I liked what I was doing, and that's just how it was with me. And then, I was doing pretty well, and this is the part of the story that my friend Art always made the sign of the cross at. I met this girl named Amy, and she came to work at the Animal Welfare Agency where I was, and she was going to school at Berkeley, and she was off for the summer, and she got this job as a humane educator, and I just was so cuckoo over her. I don't know how to. It was like an affliction, I mean, if I never feel like that again, it would be fine, So I guess toward the end of the summer, she was having, and I always say we were about the same age. I was 33 and she was 18. So at about the end of the summer, she's having trouble seeing the future of our relationship for whatever reason. I don't know why. And so I didn't, I just had a little trouble accepting it. And I didn't do anything any good alcoholic wouldn't do. Just staked out her house to see what time she was coming home, and staked out other guys' houses that I knew she knew. And I certainly loved her enough to get drunk and visit her at work, and that's a sign. And I would call her up in the middle of the night. Her father was the president of the American Psychiatric Association, and he taught medicine at Stanford. And I would wake him up at 2 in the morning, and he would say, is this an emergency? And I'd say, yes, it is. Amy just left with a Coke dealer. And he'd say, well, call back tomorrow, son, it was really bad. And so I went down to Sunnyvale, because in Sunnyvale they have George Jones on the jukebox. If drinking don't kill me, your memory will, and stuff like that. And I went down there just to get drunk at her, and I stayed drunk for 2 years. And I lost both of my jobs. There was this. I ended up living outside. The animal welfare agency I worked for was called Pets in Need, and the nickname that everybody had for me was Pete's in Need. And I would go into a bar, and I would start telling the bartender about Amy, and finally on the second day, I'd say, why don't you just go drink somewhere else? Or I would go into a bar, and the bartender would say, Amy, right? And I knew I'd been in there, and I would just leave, And I remember I was going down the street one time, and I wet my pants a little bit, I never really wet them a lot. And this guy saw me coming, and oh shit, here comes Pete's in Need. And he went to cross the street, and he almost got hit by a car. In fact, he got slightly hit by this car. I said, serves you right, I was only going to try to borrow $1, and around Stanford University there are about 10 bars, and the bartenders sell both alcohol and cocaine in these bars, and regardless of where they worked, they all lived in the same house in Menlo Park that looked like a haunted house, and they took me in and let me stay there. On the floor with a shaggy dog named Bob, And Bob didn't like sharing the floor with me any more than I liked sharing the floor with him, and he would like growl at me when we went to bed at night. And these guys would all come home at like 3 in the morning, and they would bring home all this booze and all this dope, you know. We would just party. And I'd just come 2 in the morning, you know, and there'd be like a sea of people in this room, right? And I'd be like, oh man, I'm just way too coked up to get up, but I'm way too tired from partying all night to get up, but I'm way too coked up to sleep. Oh, it's just whatever that purgatory is, you know. So I would get up and I would try to find a can of beer that didn't have a cigarette butt in it, you know, and then I tried to smoke a cigarette butt, but you know, when you snort cocaine all night, butts aren't very long in the morning, you know, so you get that, and you, you gag because you're hungover and it's strong, you know, and then I would just go through everybody's pants pockets, just trying to, you know, find some change so I could buy some more cigarettes or beer or something, and they'd be like, oh, that's probably just pizza in need going through our pants pockets, you know, and then it got worse. I moved to Santa Cruz. I thought, I'll take a place at the shore. That's what I say. When I speak at NA, I say, man, I'm staying over in Venice now. But when in the A, I say, I took a place at the shore. Well, anyway, I was living over, and I went to Santa Cruz, and I basically just slept outside. And I told my dog Zeke we were camping. And I would beg for food at the back door restaurants and pick up cigarette butts off the street. And I used to eat in a soup kitchen. And when I ate in a soup kitchen, we would pretend that I was a volunteer. And there was all these like cute little UCSC co-eds, and I'd be like, yeah, I got to feed these bums, and be eating the soup, you know. And I did stay in the St. George Hotel, which is a luxury hotel, when it was built during the Civil War, and the Salvation Army pays your way. And I stayed there. My next door neighbor was Richard. He looked like Charles Manson. And he was from Marin County. He had lived in Marin County for 30 years. And I said, Richard, where did you live in Marin County? And he said, San Quentin. So I should have known that. You know. Richard just let me watch him shoot up. I was so fascinated by that. And he had instant coffee when you're on the bum. Instant, you know, that's you, the rich guy, has instant coffee because water's hot enough in the spigot and peanut butter and the whole place was on a tilt, and when, you know, you could just put an orange on the floor and it would roll to the wall, and you'd walk to the bathroom like this, and, it was bad. My cousin Amy, I have a cousin Eddie that lives in Berkeley who's a lawyer who grew up next door to me, and I have a cousin Amy that lives in Santa Monica who's a lawyer that grew up next to me. And they, along with my mom and my aunts, maneuvered me on to Los Angeles at this time. And my cousin Ed met me in Oakland, and I'll never forget, he gave me $40, which is the most money I'd had in a long time, and he put me on a Trailways bus, and I came to LA with everything I owned in a trash bag liner, which is our luggage, you know, when we get to, and I got here, and my cousin picked me up at the bus station and brought me to her place in Santa Monica, and it was like a nightmare. I drank everything in her house and everything in her neighbor's house, you know. I had these 2 dogs, Zeke and Blondie, and my cousin Amy's next door neighbors were Chinese, and Zeke and Blondie would jump over the fence, poop in their yard, steal all their shoes, and bring them over to my cousin's. And my cousin told the story at Thanksgiving this year about when Bill, the neighbor, had me up against the fence outside and telling me, no more seat in my yard. You know, sorry, Bill, you know. And so he put these punji sticks up and stuff on the fence so that my dogs would like impale themselves. They tried to win over. And who else has troubles? Do you have trouble like who else troubles like that, you know? And so I realized I should stop drinking, and I tried really hard to stop drinking, but I couldn't, and I tried so hard, and it scared me because now I'm drinking against my will. And you know, the book says that we see somebody drinking, we know we should drink, and they're drinking with impunity, so we take a drink, and the phenomenon of craving occurs, and we pass through the well-known stages of a spree, and we emerge remorseful, vowing to never do it again, and then we promptly do it again. And everybody in this room is destined to die like that unless we find a spiritual solution to our disease. At least that's my opinion. You know, I would just, if you gave me a lie detector test, it would show that I meant to go out and find a job, but I couldn't get past the first bar, you know. So my mom sent $1,000 for me to move out of my cousin's house with, which my cousin thought that God had sent the check. And she went to Mexico with her boyfriend and her son. So I thought, man, I have the whole, and I thought to myself, you know, I wouldn't need this whole $1,000 to move out of my cousin's house with, so I decided to have a moving out party. So I got 1/8 of an ounce of cocaine. I got my drug of choice, which was Tanqueray gin. And I wasn't dating a lot at the time, surprisingly, so I got a couple of dates out of the yellow pages, you know, and I just had like a moving out party, you know. I'll never forget it. In the morning, I had exactly 20 cents left of the $1,000. Just, oh my God. My cousin's gonna be mad at me. I got rolled, so that's what they all tell me. So I had the worst hangover I ever had. It was so bad, it just scared me. And I went into the bathroom, and I just was so sick. And I saw all, my whole life. I saw my grandfather was the town doctor, and he delivered me, and he named me, and he wanted me to have his medical practice after him. And I was this altruistic kid that loved everybody, and everybody loved me, and I had done a lot of good things in my life, and had the potential to do a lot of things. And I was just a street drunk. I was just dying of alcoholism, and I got up, and I got down on my cousin's floor, her kitchen floor, and I prayed to God, please help me, whatever. If you're up there, help me. And I got up, and I went through the yellow pages, and I called Alcoholics Anonymous. And they said, where do you live? And I said, I live in Santa Monica. We'll have someone call you. And in about 3 minutes, Jim Barracks called me. And he said, where do you live? I live on 10th Street. He said, so do I. I'll be right there. And he was there in like 5 minutes. And he said, you want to go to a meeting? I go, yeah. So he brought me here. And in those days, they had a restaurant upstairs. And so they bought me dinner, and they bought me a big book. And we came down here. And when we were holding hands, I don't remember a thing that the speaker said. I know it was a woman. But we were holding hands and saying the Lord's Prayer. And I started to cry, and I hadn't cried in years. And I just knew I was all done. All done. And I needed every drink I took. You could have all come out on a couple of buses the night before, and I wouldn't have come with you, but you could not block the door that night. You sent me to Australia, I would have gone to Australia. I was willing. And the book says that we need to be badly mangled, and I was badly mangled. And my first sponsor was Ronnie Weber, and he made me get 7 commitments. I had a commitment here, I had a commitment everywhere, and my cousin had this car, and the brakes went out in the car, and I didn't want her to know it because I was afraid she'd take it away from me, so I stopped it with the parking brake, and I had 5 coffee pots from Ohio in the back, and I'm going around like that, and I'm saying the 3rd step prayer all the time, and I got, I was nuts. I was crazy. They couldn't make me be quiet in the meetings, and I gave a rousing, when I took a 60-day chip at 26 and Broadway, I gave a rousing 20-minute address, and it took an astronaut, Buzz A, to talk me safely down into my seat. And I hope I'm not here when you get 90 days. I hope you're not either. What have you ever done? And like that, and I got all the jobs you get when you're new. I got a job with some guy's a tree trimmer. I met him here, but he was here in a court cart. I didn't know. I met him at the Beverly Wood laundromat. He was so drunk, and he's like, just cut any limb you want, and like that. And there were these 2 prostitutes that raked the leaves, and my job was to take them to the methadone clinic at noon every day with the car, the brake, and the coffee pots rattling around the back. And I got the job in a boiler room where you call up how's everything in Fort Lauderdale? I talked to you last week, and I'm just going to tell you a whole bunch of lies and send you 1 million pens, okay? And it was kind of terrible. And so my cousin Amy, because I didn't find it necessary to work, she thought I'd lived there long enough, so I went over here to Claire Foundation on Washington Boulevard, and I knew they didn't have a bed, so I got down on my knees in the bathroom, and I asked God for them to take me in because I didn't want to be homeless again. That's where I met this man named Arthur East. He was about 75 years old. And he had he had like this big permed gray hair and a neckerchief and a nice sport coat, and he always drove a new Thunderbird. And he was this really cool guy, and he had been in the mob, worked for Meyer Lansky and stuff, and he was sober about 20 years or something, and he ran the place, and he said to me, well, if you're going to live here, you might as well know where the coffee is, and he always knew what to say, Art did. And I lived on the sofa in his office, and every morning he'd come in, jingling his keys, Mr. Pete, time to get up, and he taught me stuff. You want to have friends? Be a friend. You want to have good sobriety? Mind your own business. You want to be happy? Happiness is just a byproduct of love and service. You need a car. He gave me his mother-in-law's car. You need a job. He got me a job working in a liquor store. And I worked in a liquor store for my first 4 years for $5 an hour. So you need a better job. He got me a job working for Claire Foundation in charge of fundraising and public relations. And he was in the hospital here in Santa Monica Hospital, and he would call me. The nurses don't know how to fix my pillows. And I'd go and I'd just put 2 one way and 2 the other. And he just wanted to see me. And he had helped thousands of guys like he helped me. And the day before he died, he told me, Pete, you're my best friend. And the day he died, there was a little street drunk named Kenny that used to run through here a lot, and he was my buddy. He died on my front lawn of our disease. And we were there when Art died, and I put a suit on and I wrote a eulogy and I read it over at St. Paul's Church, and these are the kinds of things that happen to us when we're sober. nobody really cares how long you're sober for. They wish, you know, if as soon as I hear somebody has more time than me, I don't like them already. You know, I mean, who cares how much time you have, or how many people you sponsor, or what you look like on the outside, or what you do for a living. You know, that's not, you know, what we really have here is the love that we give and take, and the help that we give and take. It's everything. You know, it's a big deal when we get sober, and it's a big deal when we die, and everything else is just smoke and mirrors. And, you know, that person beside you, they could be gone tomorrow. And the most precious commodity that we have in here is one another. I promise you that. I've been given every answer from, not from God, but through other people from God. And just, I mean, I've lost so many people in here, so many people, drunk and sober. You know, it's like it's the sadness in my life, you know. And there was this guy named Terry Hart. He gave the best AA talk I ever heard. And at the end of the talk, he said, "Oh, by the way, I just got diagnosed with lung cancer. I'm supposed to only have 6 months to live." And so I gave him my card, you know, call me up, you know, and if you need something. About a week later, he needed $100 or something. Well, Terry ended up in the VA hospital, so I went to see him. And there were like 4 other guys that helped Terry. They had the same relationship with him that I did. I didn't know before. And every night we would go and we would sit with him in the hospital. And for those 3 months, we became the best friends. Me and those 4 other guys will be friends till we died. And when Terry died, we took his ashes up where we have the men's retreat, and to the retreat place. And there were the Brother Peter and Brother Jared, all these priests, and they all had on their brown robes with the rope belts, you know, and I had Terry's ashes, and someone else had a picture of Terry, and someone had some flowers, and we walked, the priests and all of us, we walked up this beautiful hillside in this deep grass with the dogs loping beside us, and we got to the top where all the priests are buried, and we scattered Terry's ashes, and Father Peter said, you know, he said, we priests need inspiration, and he said, the way you guys took care of Terry inspired me to be a good priest for another year, you know, and that's the kind of stuff that we get to do here. And so anyway, you know, it's just, I've been on the wrong track so much, you know. I mean, I just got to the point where I was just so sick of being dragged through life kicking and screaming, and I just don't have to get my own way anymore. Well, anyway, I wrote an inventory. It was like my life story. Like, it started, I came out of the womb, and it was like, and now, Howard, I'm meeting you at the Marina Center. And when I asked Howard to help me carry it upstairs, he knew he was in trouble, you know. So we're upstairs, and there was a wonderful man that owned this building named John Brill that died a few years. He was such a nice guy, and we were in John's office, and Howard was nodding off, you know, and you did what? I said, yeah, I slept with his wife. Yeah, don't do that again, no, and he'd nod off again. And then I had like the gnarliest amends. Like I wrecked my best friend's wedding in Oregon. They didn't invite me because I was like a raving drunk. And I thought, what a nice wedding present would be to just show up, you know? So I went up there. I was so good until the reception. So I remember the cops, the sheriff's deputies, everybody crying. I thought, oh boy, you know. I thought, if I ever go back to Oregon, they'll kill me, you know? So I went back, and she came up to me, my friend's wife, and gave me a big hug and a big kiss, and she said, you know, we love you. When are you going to come and stay with us again? You know, and that was all that fear for nothing, you know, and all my amends, you know, were just great like that, you know. And so that was really a powerful part of our program. I'm in this, every Tuesday night I go to a step study, and it takes a whole year and a half to go through the book and the steps, and we start again. That's really good for me. It's the most wonderful thing, you know. That's the real work of this program. You know, you can go to Gold's Gym, and you can get a Gold's Gym cap and a Gold's Gym shirt, and you can know the names of all the machines and hang out there and drink the drinks. But you know what? If you don't pick up any weights, you're not going to get any muscles. You know, you come here, you can go to coffee and take newcomers to meetings, but you know, if you don't work the steps, you're not going to get the benefit. That's the real work of this program. You know, and well, that's what I think anyway. So, I know I'm also a recovered guru. I used to sponsor about 10 guys and make them come to my house every Wednesday night, and it should have been called like the Do As I Say and Not As I Do group of Alcoholics Anonymous. And like the night before I was going to get drunk, I just admitted to them I just didn't know anything and they shouldn't come back, you know, and it was such a relief, you know. For part of my guruism, I was living in my car in the back, and it's very humbling to be a guru and living in your car, you know. It's like the Chris Farley guy in Saturday Night Live, lives in his car down by the creek. But so anyway, when I was living in my car, they called my car Pete's Hotel, And this guy, Tom Engel, who was a lawyer, he was making coffee on a Sunday night about 13 years ago. He said, you know what, Pete? You can get a job driving around your hotel. You just get in your car, it's a messenger job, and you get paid every Friday. I know these guys at Pacific Group, they have a messenger service, so I got a job as a messenger. And I thought, I could do this, so I started my own company, and now today, like 13 years later, it's huge. It's just huge. We have like 70 employees. It's just thriving, you know. And it's just wonderful. You know, I just live like a king, you know. It's just wonderful, and it failed many times. You know, like I would come in and say, Pete, all the checks you wrote bounced, and everybody quit. Oh. Is that bad? Yeah, that's bad. I'm like, well, it'll be better tomorrow, you know? And the funny, it's just like a frog that fell into a big vat of milk, you know? And he didn't want to drown, and he just kept flopping around until he ended up sitting on a big brick of butter. You know, and that's how my life has been in sobriety. I just didn't drink, and I didn't give up, you know? And I have like the greatest life today. I had more Amy's. You know, I have, oh my God, I was in here one night and, you know, weeping, and Howard said to me, you know what? I don't even want to know her name, you know. I said, oh, how are you? So Howard says, you just go in your backyard and you just, I said, she's not going to be there, you know. You just meditate. So I went in my backyard and I was like really quiet for like an hour every morning for 3 days, and I forgot all about it, and I forgot what I was so sad about, and it really made a believer in me in the power of meditation. And that's really important. I believe in meditation. And I believe in love and service, and I believe in minding your own business in sobriety. When I was new, I went to a different program, which I won't mention, but it's mostly Hispanic guys that shot dope, and I went there, and this guy says to me, what's the matter? You know, I was all pissed off about something, and he says, what's wrong with you? I said, he says, all you got to worry about, see that sidewalk square? All you got to worry about is that sidewalk square you're standing in. I go, no, you don't understand. Bob asked Tom for a cigarette, and he gave him one. I said, not in your square. Just worry about your own shit. He says, have you made all your amends yet? I said, no. He said, have you got rid of all your character defects yet? No. Well, then you're not ready to work on anybody else's program yet. I said, no, you know, and it helped me because running all West LA was really a big job, you know. I had to, you know, they're identifying as addicts from the podium. They're not cleaning the bathroom at the Marina Center. She shouldn't marry him because he hit her. He doesn't work for this. Shouldn't work for this guy's on payment. Was one day, I just resigned. Like, you know, like I resentfully quit all the jobs I've ever had, you know. And I said, fuck it, you know. Now, today, I'll bump into somebody who has my old job of running all of West LA, and they don't like it any more than I did. And nobody likes them any more than they like me, you know. And today, I don't have any resentments. And the reason I don't have any resentments is because I don't pay any attention to what you do. And if I don't pay attention to what you do, I'm not going to judge you, and I'm not going to resent you. I'll help anyone. I mean, you can come over to my menagerie of people and dogs and cats and whatever the hell my house is. But, you know, I just mind my own business. That's really important. And I believe, I also think that sobriety, if you're going to live a spiritual life, we have to get rid of the popularity contest. Not everybody's going to like you or approve of you, especially around here. And not everybody's, you know, 100% healthy, shall we say, you know. So what's the big difference if you know what I'm saying? It's okay. You know, you know who you are, you know, so. My sponsor, Howard, who's the most spiritual person I know, just, you know, he says things like, well, fuck them, you know. So I figured, I think I get it now, you know. So, anyway, I've had like I've had the most wonderful time. And, you know, every part of my life is a complete disaster if you look at it. You know, like my health, I've been going to the cardiologist and I'm wearing all these things, and it's a bad thing when the cardiologist asks you, do you have a will? Like, why, you know? And I sort of missed the mark on my taxes last year, and so I mean, my business, like financial shambles, and like the relationship department, you know, like I have these dates, the only time I get to hold their hand is during the Lord's Prayer and all these things, you know, and you know, I would always say that, you know, my idea of a long-term relationship is just buy a lap dance from the same girl every time I go, but I'm about ready to take a 16-month chip from that, so. I have a lot more money, I'm telling you, than I used to have, so. So anyway, but you know what? Even though all those areas of my life are screwed up, I'm really a happy whole person, you know. And I am. I have God in my life, and I have more fun than anybody. I get 3 massages a week from Burke Williams, and I go to see I'm going to go to Europe and see all my favorite operas, and I just have a great life today. I have so many wonderful friends that love me, which are the real treasure in my life. And I just have been the recipient of, I mean, and the other thing is, I've been treated like the muscular dystrophy poster child here. I have been a person who's needed so much help, and I've been loved. That's what I really like what Jim Barrick said tonight, which was really true. You know, love is it. And that's like the medicine, and I've been loved through everything, you know. And I wanted to say one last thing, and I think faith is really important. My sponsor, Howard, always talks about the 3rd step, that we turn our will and our life over to the care of God all the time. But if you had a medical problem and you turn your medical problem over to a doctor, but you thought the doctor was a quack, you would still worry. Or if you had a legal problem and you turn your legal problem over to a guy, but you thought he was an ambulance chaser, you would still worry. You can turn your will and your life over to the care of God, but you need to have some faith in that God before you do it. It's like the 3rd step is walking out on a frozen lake, and how thick the ice is determined by how well you work the 2nd step. You know, and if you work the 2nd step, then life's just a happy skate if you really have faith. If not, you're going to be worried about falling through the ice all the time. You know, we need to have faith, and I try so hard to believe and remember that I've been brought this far, and to always, you know, have faith and to just know, hey, it's cool, you know, it's cool. Everything is always cool. And anyway, I hope that you all keep coming back, and I really thank you for sitting through my talk. God bless you.